1995 Godzilla Wars action figures. There were a few scales, but I got all these 6-inch action figures, because I did most of the monsters in that scale. Of course, these are kind of re-releases of the Godzilla King of the Monsters line from 1994. But as far as we can tell from the back of the carding, just a few of the monsters got released in that one. And with Godzilla Wars, we kind of tasted more of the newer Godzilla films that were coming out in the 90s. So were probably a little difficult to get in the United States at the time. Not sure how quickly they ever turned around tapes, since I was probably buying cheap VHS tapes of the older Godzilla movies from 60s and 70s around this time. I only ever had mine from getting them at like a discount store like Big Lots. For cheap, they sent this toy line there years later. So I had several as a kid, but I didn't have Godzilla because, of course, you can imagine that's the figure that sold out every time. If somebody was going to get one figure, they got Godzilla. And that goes for kids playing with the toys, and then without a whole lot of collectibles at the time, any adult that's a fan of the films was probably buying this for display at the home, or playing around, or putting it at work for fun. So I always wanted the official Godzilla that went with this because I had some of the other monsters as a kid, but I had to get this one way after the fact, just collecting. And this is actually the light up one, so we get the glowing eyes, which is pretty cool. He just has a battery spot under the tail there. You can just unscrew and put some of those little batteries in there. AG-13 or something like that, most likely. But you can see, unlike the packaging of the King of the Monsters stuff, where he's really green, they have the very dark here, and then even like a very light blue silvery bit for kind of detailed painting all down his spine. Those colored claws on his hands and feet. Otherwise, he's pretty much solid colored. Dark avocado, I would say, is the color they use. No, he's just kind of like a very dark, like a black shade, really. So they definitely were basing these more off those 90s movies that I only got to see way after the fact. The only Godzilla figure I got to have was, of course, from the 1998 film. So this was the Godzilla I was having to play with the rest of the monsters with, because that's all I had, and then that's what got me into Godzilla. That movie was coming out, there was a lot of advertising behind it, the toys for it were in the store, so then I got to see the old tapes and then see the old monsters in the discount store. So back in the 90s I was using this with them because that's all I had. Isn't it weird that he had a spot to shoot a missile, like he had atomic breath, but he didn't have it in the movie? What's up with that? Also, I like the unimaginative card back where it doesn't show any of the pictures of the toy, just giant space for the giant foot. Thanks. So we'll try to start with the ones I'm pretty sure were from that King of the Monsters line. So we have Mothra, that's probably a re-release, because she's kind of part of the older Godzilla films, although character did get reused in the 90s movies. We got soft-ish wings and then hard plastic body head and body. The head can turn, just a little bit of flap range on the wings, and then the legs are just kind of there, but they are soft. But a lot of color and detail for that on the wings and the body. I like the primary colors here with blue eyes. But cruelly, especially me as a kid, it had the cover, like it was the electronic version. There was electronic versions of all of them that made sound, but when you open this up, it's just empty. They didn't put the electronics in it. It has a speaker. They just released them without, but left all the mechanisms and stuff. It's like, wow, how cruel. So I did think about getting all the sound ones, but really, since I just display these on my shelf, it's probably better to get the non-electronic one anyway. But a few of them I do have the electronic version. We get to hear a few roars here and there. So that's Mothra. Mothra I had as a kid, and Mecha Godzilla I had also. Just kind of simple arm turn around there. The legs can turn all the way too. Nothing moves on the tail. We got the head can turn. You can see a little bit of discoloration on the plastic of the arms and legs from the age of this. And they are a little bit softer plastic for some reason, the arms and legs. So that might be why they are the ones discoloring. But we got the tiny head Mecha Godzilla. Did get used in the 90s movies. So you can see why they included. Again, it has the slot for the battery thing, but he's a non-electronic one. It's just the basic 6-inch line. So basically just in the silver plastic, but with the eyes colored in, but I think it's a nice, you know, there's a sheen to it, so it's pretty nice for Mecha Godzilla. And I like that these kind of represent, you know, the toys I was playing with at the time, and the videotapes and movies I was watching, and kind of the versions in the films that were coming out at the time, even though I didn't really get to see those until a lot later. So this represents a lot of Godzilla for me, like in my toy collecting, you know, instead of movie accurate ones specifically from different movies. I mean, this is just kind of a toyish toy line. It's just for fun, but that way it kind of represents multiple things. We have a very monstrous looking Rodan from the set as well, with very soft wings. But pretty big. I mean, he still had to fit in the package, but gave him a little bigger, thicker body to go with the others. The head moves. He has a lot of extra spikies going on here. And then the feet, the legs kind of turn, but don't give him a whole lot of motion. He's just all about getting the soft plastic so he can flap the wings. Rodan was always kind of my favorite, like, second to Godzilla. Like my number 2 important monster. I like how fierce and stuff they really made him in this one. Again, he has the door on the back that would have had the electronics one. Of course, then that puts like a red button into them, so I mean, for looks, you kind of just want the non-electronic ones, because then you don't have the glaring red button that makes them do their little roar, roar sound effect. It does kind of affect the looks, as we'll see later when we get some of the electronic ones. So next is King Ghidorah, just the regular version that you'd see in the films, but he kind of had this tail here. You can see the sort of points here like this. And then that's movable, but it is detachable as well. The wings kind of just have a little flap range there. Each head can turn all the way around, and then that's a little bit of a soft plastic like the wings with the head. And then the legs have that same turn, but they are stubby. This one actually came with an alternate tail, so he has kind of this more machine-like tips here that are probably more like the Mecha King Ghidorah tail, but since they just had the parts, I guess they just included it anyway. So I did always wonder that as a kid, like, why does it come with this? But you could put that in there. Like, you can almost see it's a little bit different gold. I don't know if that shows up, but the figure is more of a shine to it, and this is a little more dull. So the other tail actually matches the lighter gold. So it's really the one that's intended to go with this version of Ghidorah. And of course, that was always one of my main bad guys. Since I only had a few of these, this one I did have as a kid. A lot of good texture in the molding and plastic of it, even with just the solid color appearance. I feel like really you were supposed to get the big scale figures. There was like bigger, taller ones, but they only had a few characters with that size, but that's why I like this one, just because I had more of the monsters, and obviously they were cheaper, so you could get more of them. I wanted like all the characters. So of course there was a Mecha King Ghidorah figure, so they kind of reused some of the parts. At least I didn't have this one as a kid, especially you can see I didn't have any electronic ones here, and this is an electronic one. You can see the button is just the red like knob here. Speaker in the front there, battery spot in the back where you can replace. But that does affect the visual, because here you can see a non-electronic one and doesn't have the button. It's the same figure, but it's the standard release that the rest of all of these were. And this is the electronic version that's just the same figure, but it just has the electronics included inside, plus the button molded into it. So for looks, if you don't want to have that red spot, you kind of would want the original normal one like this, instead of the deluxe electronic one. So it's a lot of the same details. The flapping wing, the legs, and then of course the spot to remove the tail or not. I think these heads are actually have like a turning on the neck. There's a seam there, but it kind of resists the turning. The mecha head in the middle is just one piece. So a few differences from the normal Ghidorah. But just as an example there's a difference if you get the electronic one, so it's not always the preferred version, really. There's still a lot of solid colors, but a few paint apps here with like the wing has its own shade, and then of course the reds, and then the green eyes on the mecha head in the middle. I would love to have this as a kid and kind of swap out, you know, go with the mecha version sometimes. Would have been pretty fun. And so I also had Gigan as a kid, because that was one of the movies I would have was like versus Megalon. Gigan was in that one. You can see I kind of played with it quite a bit. We have some cracking in the neck there, but here we have the head turn and it's like an arched kind of head. Ooh, yeah, we got some breaking from that. Unfortunate. But again, these are my childhood played with ones. We have the arms moving. He seems like he's more of a brittle plastic, I guess, because I see a few more cracks, so they only show so much movement. The tail turns in the back and he has the huge soft plastic, back spine as well. Actually, a lot of colors and details with this one, so well worth getting. And then it's kind of a modernized Gigan. He wasn't in the 90s movies. It's not one that they reused, but it's kind of cool to see him like this, like what he might have looked like in a movie of that time period. And that kind of reminds me that some of these came with like trading cards and stuff, the Godzilla Wars. So some of them did have cards, Gigan's card there, and then it had different stats and info about them, powers and things like that. Kind of cool that you could get them, but you had to have all the figures to get all the cards, so I'm probably missing some, unfortunately. That'd be a pretty cool one to complete. I do like to show some trading cards once in a while here too, instead of just figures, because that was a pretty big thing in the 90s at the time. So I'm pretty sure those were the ones that were in the King of the Monsters line, and I don't think the rest were in that first 1994 line, because right on the packaging of the Godzilla Wars stuff is Space Godzilla, so the figure I would think only would come out for the Godzilla Wars line, especially since the movie only came out in 1995, so it feels like there's no way. I assume they were making the toy line because it was kind of getting a resurgence in popularity and stuff with the newer movies coming out, starting in the 80s. I didn't get to find or have Space Godzilla, but I wouldn't have been able to see the movie for a long time anyway. But he was on the packaging. We got turning head there. He's got his big crystal arm, so that kind of affects how much you can move it that way, but then there's a swivel to the arm underneath it. And we got legs moving and the tail twisting. Kind of has like a rainbow color effect in the body and a very, very blue body everywhere else. I did manage to get the electronic version here, so again you can see the looks are affected with this like red button nub coming out. So it's a little weird, but you get to have the sound that way. Just the same roar over and over. It would probably be nicer if one button hit just did it once. You probably could play easier with it that way. So kind of from the same movie, technically, is Moguera. A few more parts, not really like transformative, but the hands can open up, the drill kind of shape. And the arms go up and down. The torso actually has a twist, and the head has the twist. The legs just rotate at the bottom. But he has these little fins that you can pull out, and an awkward tail piece. And then the chest here is open, and the drill piece is kind of separate here. It can go onto the front. It doesn't fit on real great. It doesn't snap into place, but it stays on there mostly. So I don't know if you're supposed to just like twist the legs sideways and make him look more like a flying configuration with the wings out or something, or what, but it doesn't transform a whole lot with any of the articulation, really. You could maybe put the drill on the hands for a more clear drill sort of thing, or I guess it's supposed to go on the tail. I don't think so. So I'm not real sure what the features exactly were supposed to be there, but again, one where I just kind of sought out and got a hold of the electronic one just because I kind of wanted to hear them. I was always wanting to hear the sounds because all the figures had the mechanism, there, but none of the electronics inside. But I guess the battery is dead in him already. I just changed out a new one. I have other videos for these that I kind of focused on cleaning up and stuff, so you can hear Moguera in his own video. Look for that one. But I do like his color with like the blue bits and stuff, instead of just making him like Mecha Godzilla and all silver. I think that adds a lot. And then of course the drill bits and stuff give him his own kind of weaponry for fun. There was Battra, which I think it's only in... I can't find a picture of him in the King of the Monsters line, but maybe he was. Flappy wings, a little stiffer. They're not as soft as like Mothra's. The head will turn around, and crazily enough, all his little legs kind of are their own little turning motion, which is a little unnecessary, really, but they did it, so that's something. So again, this is like a 90s movie monster. It was only in that series, really. So representing that time period, a lot of colors again, a nice antithesis to Mothra if you have that figure. And again, I like that this is representing those movies that I would have killed to see as a kid because they were a way cooler effect in the 90s, you know, I mean a lot more advanced and would have been cooler to watch and show my friends than the very old ones that were a little more loose with their effects with the costumes and stuff. Battra, a pretty cool one, but again, I didn't know a lot of these monsters too well because I couldn't see the movies back then. So he was probably in the stores when I got mine as a kid, but didn't get him until recently to finish the collection. Looks like he's an electronic one here. Ooh, already dead again. Which again is just like a hazard for your collection, that there's like the batteries in here that could be degrading and stuff because you're not like playing with them every day, or at least I'm not. So it's probably better just to have the non-electronic version because then you don't have the button either, but that one kind of almost sneaks into Battra's design pretty well, just one of the nubs on the back. A very advanced one, Biollante. So many arms, a lot more color detail around. You can already hear the sound going off because I did get the electronic version of that one. The legs move a little bit, the head can turn, and then all these arms kind of have a turn. But again, a monster I wouldn't have even known, but I probably would have got because it looks so awesome. Not an easy one to hunt down, but I did get that for the collection, and again, I love that it's of those 90s movies. Actually, the first monster Godzilla was really fighting in that 89 movie, so they started out doing original monsters until they started doing some of the classics in between, adding more new monsters. That's also what's kind of sad about this line, that it didn't continue it long enough to get like a really good Destroya figure for like the last movie of that series. That would have been pretty sweet. Would have kept it in stores longer. I would have had more chances to maybe get Godzilla and some of the others back then, when I could have appreciated them a lot more. But that's what I usually do here, is buy toys I wish I had as a kid. So it's still fun to get a hold of these now, because then I can show them here. So the softer plastic for all those arms, so you can kind of do a little more like articulating past the point of just the point of articulation on a very detailed one. And then a little bit more rare one here with Megalon, which is another just kind of reimagining, like thinking of what he would have looked like maybe in a 90s Godzilla movie, but they never used him in those. Just in the old one here, he's got his wings that kind of can turn on the spot. I believe one is broken, so I can't rotate that one. He's got the usual, like the tail, the arms and legs, and the head. Really good colors for him. And that pairs really well with Gigan then, too. We just didn't get like a 90s Jet Jaguar figure that would have looked really cool. The ultimate Godzilla tag team match. But he has the electronic version too, but it's kind of worn out. I have a separate video when I first got him that you can hear the sound in. This was actually kind of the start of me like finishing off the collection. I was like, ooh, I kind of want to get that one. And then I went into getting the 90s ones like Space Godzilla and all those. I procured the rare Megalon first to get that ball rolling. I mean, if you can't get some of them because they're too rare, then it kind of hurts the collection. But I am missing two of them. There's Baragon and Varan that I guess are even more rare to get, and they're of this scale. I'm going to try my best to get them, but for some reason this toy line is actually still really sought after, even though it's really specific to a lot of the looks just are from this toy line. They're not necessarily movie accurate representations or anything like that. So it's interesting that it's very popular still. Probably because a lot of kids like me, you know, I was young that time and I was playing with them. So they might have been a lot of people's childhood Godzilla toys. So let me know if they were yours, because they were certainly mine. Although I had to mix and match with a little 1998 Godzilla to make do. But at least I had a lot of the old characters. It was really fun to have. So obviously I got way into Godzilla after that time. So again, looking at the card back here, we have Anguirus. I don't know if that's a cancelled one, but I don't think there was ever released a 6-inch version. There was a small 4-inch version, so it's funny that they included him and knew about him. Again, it's like a 90s design kind of version of him. Upright and very hulking looking. But since the 4-inch version wouldn't scale very well with them, I just never got that one. They were also non-articulated, they were just little plastic statues. Here you can see like the Godzilla one, just to compare to the scale of these that I'm showing, as well as Mecha King Ghidorah. But I kind of always skipped those because you could tell that they were just solid statues and they wouldn't be very fun to play with, unlike these that have a lot of articulation motion. There's like a separate Godzilla from the supercharged Godzilla, which is the figure I showed at the beginning, the one with the light up eyes. I think this is just the big version, like the huge one is what it looks like. I don't think there was a separate 6-inch one. You can tell he's maybe has a little bit more dark green tint to him, but I'm pretty sure that's a picture of the large, like 10-inch size one. So that's pretty much all the figures from the Godzilla Wars, at least in this scale. So I do hope to do an update sometime if I can get those 2 big missing characters. Because again, this is my childhood, like Godzilla toys, and I really like them. And I like what they kind of represent, a wide range of things, like the old movies that you could get on tape, the 90s ones that were coming out at the time that I enjoyed a lot because of all the super practical effects and stuff in them. I don't know if I could ever be convinced to get the, there's a Godzilla Force, where they were kind of like Sentai, Power Ranger-y looking characters they made up just for the toy line. I always saw those in the discount store. They're cheap too, but I never really thought to waste the money on them because they were just original, made up for the toy line. But it could be fun to get and show here just to see, because I was always curious about them. They looked kind of cool, but I already had my Power Ranger toys anyway, so if I wanted to play, you know, Power Rangers versus Godzilla monsters, I already had the option. That's what I like to do here, show my 90s action figures, things that I had, and then things that I wished I had. I kind of go out of my way and get, so I can add it to my collection. This was kind of a combination there. A lot of these I did have as a kid, but I do like to get the missing ones so I can show them here and add them to my collection. You can see a little more in-depth of some of the other Godzilla things, and hopefully there's other series of 90s figures you might be interested here. Stick around and get subscribed so you can watch all those. That way I'll get to see you in the next video.